Good evening. Welcome to the Midnight Binge Podcast, a show about the best Netflix content in the known universe. I'm your host, Migs, and in today's episode, we're going to continue talking about the new Netflix original series, Cursed, and finishing up the first half of the show. So let's get started. So, on last week's episode, we started talking about the new Netflix original series, Cursed. That episode mainly focused on episode number 1 of the series. Now, initially, I had planned on maybe doing one episode of the podcast per episode of the TV show Cursed, but that I figured it was going to take too long to do it that way. So, in this episode, on episode number 3 of the podcast, I'm going to take the remaining episodes on the first half of the show. So that's going to be episode 2 through 5 and talking about those. So instead of doing a detailed breakdown of step by step of what happened on the show as I did last week for episode 1, I'm going to be giving more of an overview and a quicker paced analysis of what is happening on the show. So episode 2 really gets started when we see Nimue as a young girl. I believe in this scene, she's about 10 years old. And she hears some voices in the forest calling her name. She thinks that is her best friend Pim calling her. The voice sounds just like Pim's voice. So Nimue, she gets out of bed and heads over to the forest and ends up in a cave where she believes Pim is hiding. Just to be confronted by this huge black bear with glowing red eyes, which we later find out is sort of this demonic entity that was tricking Nimue because he wanted to eat her. Now, when Nimue is confronted with this bear, her mom is woken out of bed, kind of like with a motherly instinct because of Nimue's scream. Now, somehow, Lenore, Nimue's mother, is able to communicate with Nimue telepathically. So Nimue's in the cave, backing away from the bear, and Lenore, with her mind, tells Nimue to call out to the hidden. So the hidden are these the nature spirits, these ancestral spirits in this in the universe of this show. And Lenore advises Nimue to reach out to them because she knows she's not going to make it there on time to save her daughter from this demonic bear. So we see little Nimue grasping the dirt and closing her eyes and clenching her fist. And trying to communicate with the hidden. Now the bear does scratch little Nimue on her back, with his giant bear claws, and she gets injured pretty bad. But she is able to make contact with the hidden, and a piece of the cave falls on the bear's head right before he's going to maul her, and basically just crushing the bear to death. So Nimue escapes with her life by reaching out to the hidden. Now, we see this as a constant theme here in these first set of episodes. Whenever Nimue is in danger, it's like she can instinctively reach out to the hidden, or the hidden somehow protects her from the danger that she's encountering. Now, we see this repeat itself when Nimue is escaping her village. As you recall, at the end of episode 1, Nimue's village, the village of the Sky People, has been basically burned to the ground by the Red Paladins, and most of the inhabitants were murdered. And as Nimue is running through the forest to get away from there and to fulfill her mother's dying wish of taking the sword to Merlin, she is confronted by a red paladin in the forest who tries to kill her. And we later find out that this paladin's name is Brother Obo. He comes into play later in the episode. I believe is in episode 3. But anyway, as Brother Obo is trying to kill Nimue, she gets flashbacks of this encounter with the bear, and she again grasps the floor. She puts her hands to the floor, and it looks like the hidden, or wherever it is that she obtains her magical abilities from, protects her. In this case, the vines from and the roots of the trees come out from under the ground and string up Brother Obo, and he basically is lifted up in the air and crucified or impaled with these vines. Now, because of this encounter that Nimue had with this demonic bear as a child, she has always been an outcast among her own people, among the Skyfolk. So the bear clawed her back, and she gets these really horrible looking scars on her back, and instead of bleeding, it's more like a glow, like lava glow or something that's shining through her back. Now the elders of the Sky People say that Nimue has been marked by the devil, or that she is cursed. They literally say, I believe this is where the TV show might actually get its name from. They say that Nimue is cursed, and that she's going to bring that bad omen, or she's going to bring this curse upon her village if she's allowed to live, or if she's allowed to stay in town. Now, stemming from this, she has been marginalized her whole life. So in one scene, she cries to her mother after trying to run away, saying, "You're not the one that the other kids are afraid of playing with." And anywhere that Nimue goes, you see the other village people talking behind her back. There's scenes where Nimue is humiliated by other teenagers, where she's entrapped, basically, led to believe that this boy, wanted to date her, just to be, humiliated and have the other teenage children rip her clothes off to take a look at the scars on her back. So it's a common theme. Nimue, she's never felt like she belonged, and people constantly mock her and make her feel unwelcomed. Now, after the scene with Nimue as a child, we cut back to King Uther Pendragon. So we find out that the king's proper name is Uther Pendragon, and he is very mad at Merlin. So, as you recall from episode 1, King Uther was demanding that Merlin basically make it rain. So there was a drought going on in the kingdom, and Uther needed that to Merlin. He needed Merlin to use his magic to cause it to rain, and it eventually started raining. It's not clear if it happened because of anything that Merlin did, but unfortunately it started raining blood all over the castle, and the king was humiliated when he drank a cup of blood in front of his guests, thinking that it was rainwater. So after all this happens, the king he's trying to get into Merlin's chamber in the castle, since Merlin lives there. And Merlin, he's freaking out because he doesn't know why it's raining blood. He just has a bad feeling about this whole thing, and he says that he needs more time to figure out what's going on. So he basically just escapes through a window or something, and King Uther is left there yelling. Now, after the encounter that Nimue had in the forest with Brother Obo, where she was luckily able to get away with her life, the Red Paladins are on her trail. So they know that that she escaped through the forest, and they find Brother Obo, like I said earlier, crucified or impaled in what seems to be like a tower of vines or roots. Now, a lot of the paladins are freaked out by this, and they're on their, they're bowing down, I guess, asking for mercy or afraid. Now, Cardin, the chief of the paladins, so the leader of the paladin army, he gets angry at these guys and starts slapping them around because, he's saying you're bowing down to the enemy. Now, on the Tower of Vines that are choking out Brother Obo, there's some blood on there. And the Weeping Monk and Brother Cardin realize that this is wolf blood from the wolves that Nimue had killed on episode 1 on top of the rock. So this is where she earns her the nickname that Brother Cardin makes for her, Wolf Blood Witch. Now, Cardin is using this nickname of the Wolf Blood Witch as a way to demonize Nimue. So it's a catchy name. It's a name that in the ultra religious mind of the devotees of the time, it causes fear. It's an intimidating name, which it's silly thinking of how Nimue just seems like such a peaceful person by nature and such a nice lady. Now, because of this persecution and an active persecution by Brother Cardin on Nimue, she has to lay low. She has to hide from the paladins now. She can be easily identified by the clothes that she's wearing, that many people on the Skyfolk village wore. So she heads over to a city to basically just get lost in plain sight to hide from Brother Cardin. Now, while she's over there in the city, she stumbles upon Arthur, and Arthur starts talking to her, and unfortunately, out of the blue, Arthur's boss comes around and tells Nimue that she owes him money and points her out as the Wolf Blood Witch. Now, at this point, word has gone around that that this person, the Wolf Blood Witch, is a wanted individual, and anybody harboring this person will be publicly executed alongside with them. So when Nimue feels threatened by this man, who demands additionally to take her sword, Nimue comes around and cuts his hand off. So, and then she tells him, "You try that again, I'm gonna take off the other one." So at that point, Arthur realizes that Nimue fucked up pretty bad. So realizing that the Red Paladins are going to be there at any moment to take away Nimue and most likely kill her, Arthur grabs his horse and grabs Nimue, and luckily by the hairs on their chin, they're able to escape the fortified city right before the gate closes down on them. Now, Arthur then takes Nimue and is trying his best to hide her, to really help her. Arthur really took a liking to Nimue. I talked about him trying to get his dick wet on episode 1, and that's true. But I really think Arthur is deep down a good person and really wants to help Nimue, and his heart is in the right place. Now, in order to help Nimue, he goes ahead and takes her over to an abbey. This abbey is inhabited by a lot of nuns. One of the nuns there is Arthur's sister. We later find out that her real name is Morgana, but she does go by a different name at first before she realizes that that Nimue is a fae kind, and they become friends. When Arthur leaves Nimue sleeping at the abbey, he takes off with her sword. So he takes the sword of power and he makes away with it as she sleeps. We later find out that the reason he did this was because he was trying to restore his honor. So Arthur's father was murdered in a bar fight, and it looks like he had lots of debt. And it looks like in that time, if a father died, the debts were passed on to the sons. And Arthur was just a kid at this point, but just because he had a bunch of debt from the get go, and maybe nobody around to show him, a good life, he ended up being a bit of a criminal or, a cutthroat or a thief. They refer to him in a lot of different ways in the show. But basically, because of what happened with his father and the life that he has lived thus far, Arthur feels that he needs to restore his honor. And the way of doing that, in his eye or in his mind, is by joining a night tournament that is taking place outside of his uncle Sir Ector's palace. While this is going on, we see Merlin, after escaping King Uther's Pendragon's castle. He heads over to the Sky People's village. We see him walking into the temple where Lenore was murdered, when Nemoi's mother was murdered. And, he seems very sad by this. He does take Lenore and lay her down on top of the table in the cave. Now, it's not entirely clear why Merlin is there. I think he probably was there looking for the Sword of Power. If Lenore was in possession of the sword, it must have been because Merlin gave it to her. So he was likely reading the signs and seeing the omens and maybe understanding that it was time to maybe make use of the sword. But it's not explicitly stated at this point in the show. Now, while he's there, he feels anger. We see Merlin in an unusual state where he just seems frustrated and mad at the world. He's walking among the burnt out crosses from the genocide that the paladin had just performed on the village, and he starts kicking down these sharded crosses, and they just collapse because they're basically charcoal at this point. And at that point, a new character appears. Merlin refers to her as the widow. He also refers to her as one of his old friends. I think the widow represents death. She seems like the angel of death, or a character that falls somewhere along those lines because of her appearance. Now, she tells Merlin that the world needs Merlin, that he needs to get his shit together and do something about what's going on in the world, put a stop to what the paladins are doing to the Feykind. Merlin then reveals that the sword is still in the world. Everybody was under the impression that the sword had been destroyed. And then, the widow freaks out a little bit and asks Merlin, have you forgotten, what that sword means? Merlin is offended by this because he says, I wrote those words. And he recites the following sentence. He says, whosoever wields the sword of power should be the one true king. So, in addition to being a badass sword and being a really good sword for killing people, based on what Nimue was able to do with it so far, we also see that the sword has political influence in this reality. So this is the reason why the church, or the Red Paladin army, is after the sword as well. So once they realize that the sword is real and it's within arm's reach for them, they are all in on obtaining this sword. Because the Red Paladins, that's their goal. They want to eliminate the Feykind from the kingdom so that they can have one kingdom under God, without demons, in their own words, quote unquote, roaming the lands. Now, this sword, we find out, is the way that the Feykind have maintained relative control of the lands forever. So utilizing the sword is the way to determine who becomes king, who inherits the house of Pendragon. So it's a very not just magical and powerful sword. It it wields tremendous political influence. Merlin also says something very interesting, which is that the sword took away his magic, and that he shouldn't wield the sword and nobody else should wield the sword because the sword is so powerful that it has the power to corrupt anybody who wields it. So it really looks like Merlin regrets making this sword. It's not clear at this point, or why he made it to begin with. But it looks like the sword was the cause of wars in the past. So when the kings of the land knew of the sword, they were constantly in war with each other to get possession of the sword. Because whosoever possesses the sword will be the king of kings, will be the one true king. So they were constantly killing each other over the sword, hence why Merlin faked destroying the sword, possibly to just bring peace to the kingdom. And we initially find out then that instead of destroying it, he just gave it to Lenore for safekeeping, who then gave it to Nimue on her deathbed to bring back to Merlin. Now, going back to Nimue at the Abbey, she's basically granted asylum by Arthur's sister Morgana and is allowed to stay there. And she dresses up as a nun so that the Red Paladins don't realize that it's the Wolfblood Witch right underneath their nose. Now, the ironic thing is that what they have Nimue do during her time there is to care for an injured man that has been brought in by the Red Paladins. So after the Red Paladins finished destroying Nimue's village, the Abbey was the closest monastery nearby where they would typically regroup, eat, bathe, heal their wounded. So unfortunately for Nimue, the man that is brought in for her to care for is Brother Obo, which is the man that tried killing her in the forest in the beginning of episode 2. Brother Obo is in real fucked up shape. So when he's brought in, and this is pretty gnarly, and even Nimue seems surprised by this, because after the Hidden help her get away from Obo and saving her life because Obo wanted to murder her, Nimue just got out of there. I don't think she saw exactly what was happening to Brother Obo as he was being impaled and basically eating alive by the veins. But the Red Paladins were able to cut Brother Obo down from the veins or the vines, sorry, and brought in. Now he has tree vines or tree roots coming out of everywhere. They're just all over his body. They're inside of his veins. They're under his skin. He's just impaled all over the place. He has vines coming out of his mouth. He's just in real fucked up shape. I don't even know how he made it that far alive. In one scene, we even see Morgana taking out just a giant vine out of his throat. So out of his esophagus, she's just pulling that shit out like a rope, and it's pretty nasty. And it shows how powerful Nimue is, and how maybe inadvertently powerful or connected to the Hidden or to her druid abilities she truly is. Now, while Nimue is there at the Abbey, she overhears the Red Paladins, led by Cardan and the Weeping Monk, talking about them having documents and maps and list of Fey elders which they are using to as guides for committing their genocide. So they basically have a bunch of intel on the land and on the whereabouts of all the Fey kind elders and their villages, and are strategically using this to eliminate them one by one. Now, Cardin does bring up the sword during this meeting with his Red Paladins, and he refers to it as the Devil's Tooth. I'm not sure why they call it that. I mean, I'm sure it's just some more of his propaganda trying to demonize everything, but make it just sound extremely dangerous. I guess as a way of exercising control over it, making sure that whoever comes across it brings it back to him. Now, while they are talking about that, the Weeping Monk somehow realizes that Nimue is hiding in the abbey, and he's basically like a bloodhound. He's on her trail. He's literally sniffing clothes and going into different rooms, looking for her. He tells Cardin about that, and what Cardin decides to do is to bring all the nuns out to the barn, and the Weeping Monk somehow has the ability to, I don't know, he just seems to have this sense where he can sniff out Feykind, which probably explains, how he's such an efficient murderer. While this is all going on, Nimue and Morgana find a way of just sneaking around and avoid going to the barn. And Nimue, when she realizes that the paladins are off to trying to find her among the other nuns, she takes a lot of those documents with her that were at the meeting hall where Cardin was at, and she burns them in a chimney, which good for her. She's really thinking about all the potential people that these paladins can kill and looking out for them. It is later revealed that Morgana is basically running this underground Feykind railroad, basically, where she helps Feykind that are seeking asylum, go through the abbey and eventually make their way to safety. This is revealed when Morgana takes Nimue underground. It looks like it's under the abbey. There's a river that runs under it somehow. There's like an underground cave, and they go down there, and Morgana helps Nimue escape. So Nimue gets on a little canoe, and Morgana gives her a little map and tells her what to do to get away, and she helps Nimue escape the Red Paladins this way. Now, she tells Nimue that at the end of her route, when she walks into the forest, there's going to be a transport waiting for her. Now, the driver or the leader of this transport is a man named Desir, and he's the one that tells Nimue about the Fey Underground operation, which is used to rescue surviving Fey people from the forest and bring them back to this safe land or this haven called Nemours. And they are forming a resistance at Nemours to fight back against the Red Paladins. He informs Nimue. Now, Nimue gets into the coach car with Desir, and his wife is there, and she also sees a man with his daughter. Now, these people are interesting because Desir says that they are people from the Snake Clan, and they have a really unique look to them. They have like green, scaly faces and really receded hairlines, so they really do look like snake people. Now, in the midst of this, we're taken to a random port town, and in that scene, we see this humongous dude named Aaron being bossed around by his mom, telling him to get some fish for dinner. And while he's doing that, we find out that Pym is alive. Pym was hiding in between the cages that they use for for fishing crabs or octopus or whatever it is. And it's nice to see that Pym was able to make it out alive. I'm not sure how, as she was taken away in the back of one of the Red Paladins during the slaughter of the town. Now Merlin seems to have a plan for fixing whatever it is that's going on. We already know that he wants to destroy the sword. And it looks like the only way for him to do it is by using this special fire called Fey Fire. Now, Fey Fire was thought to have, to no longer be in existence. It looks like the Fey Fire was actually used in the creation of the sword. And Merlin is having the widow, the death or that angel of death looking lady, and he tells her that he needs a little container where he can carry some Fey Fire. Now, the only way to obtain Fey Fire is for Merlin to meet with this Shadow Lord, they call him, called Rugen. So he's just sort of like, he's like king of the zombies or something. Like all of his people are like leopard zombies, and in order to reach Rugen, Merlin has to be taken literally underground. It's like he's sucked into the ground by these people, and is brought to this underground looking world or plane where Rugen, the king, lives. Another interesting fact that we learn about Merlin and his conversation with the widow at the bar is that Merlin, how he's always drunk, he tells her that he does that because it's the only way that he can feel alive. So he goes on to explain to her, hey, I've lived for centuries. I've been in love and had my heart broken more times than I can count. And eventually nothing feels like anything anymore. And he says that the only thing that can remotely get him a little bit close to feeling anything is the feeling of being intoxicated. And I thought that was a little bit sad, but at the same time, it humanized Merlin for me a little bit, because I don't know, it's something that people really struggle with, even in real life. Alcoholism and drug abuse is a big issue in our world, and just seeing him explaining, hey, this is the only way I feel anything. It just made it sound like he was depressed, and and it made him less of this whimsical, Jack Sparrow character to a more real individual that has, connections with what issues that are relevant in our world today. At the Abbey, Morgana is also forced to leave. It seems like she no longer feels safe there after the Red Paladins take away the head nun in a wagon, presumably to kill her because she lied about no new visitors having arrived that she could recall. Nimue being the new visitor, she tried hiding from Brother Cardin, and at that point Morgana decides to just leave, and she also takes a canoe through the underground river at the Abbey to escape. And the sad thing is that we later find out that the Red Paladins are aware of these survival Fey kind transports like the Zeers, and they are planning on intercepting those. Obviously to kill the Fey people in order to continue the genocide. Now, cutting back to Arthur, He is still trying to regain his honor by, becoming a knight and being sponsored by his uncle, which is this really arrogant aristocrat, or he's just a really rich dude with a bunch of guards at his disposal, and he looks like he's never helped Arthur in his life. Now, Arthur basically he lies his way into Sir Ector's heart and agrees, and has Ector agreed to sponsor him as a knight in the tournament. Now, what do you know? When they go out to the bar to have a drink and celebrate, out of nowhere, Arthur's boss again comes around to fuck shit up for Arthur. And this time around, he tells Sir Ector that the sword that Arthur has, the sword of power that Arthur stole from Nimue, was actually stolen. You see, Arthur had told Sir Ector that he got that as a payment from a well-off girl that he saved from robbers. He obviously made all that up, but he really just wanted a way to demonstrate to Sir Ector that he was an honorable man. Now, Arthur's boss humiliates Sir Ector by forcing him to give him one of his expensive rings as payment for this supposed debt that Arthur has with this man. And at that point, Sir Ector has nothing to do with Arthur. Arthur is incredibly humiliated in front of his uncle, and at that point they get into a brawl, and Arthur kills a man with the sword of power and is arrested by the Red Paladin army, and the sword of power is taken away from him. Now, Morgana did tell Nimue that Arthur was at Grimir, so this is a city where Sir Ector lives, and Nimue was making her way there to get her sword back from Arthur, who obviously has stolen it from her. So Nimue was super pissed at Arthur at this point, and Arthur was able to escape from the prison caravan that he was being, carried away in. So Nimue eventually does find Arthur, and they're both heading back to Dazir's caravan. But when they arrive at the caravan, Nimue finds everyone dead. So Dazir has been tied up to a tree and have had a cross cut on his chest, or into his chest. The Snake Clan man is dead. The wife is dead. The one that was driving the caravan is dead. Everybody is dead. At this point, Nimue is about to faint, it looks like, and she starts hearing the hidden talking to her. So these whispers are guiding Nimue towards the sword. I want to mention that it seems like the same voices that always talk to her when the hidden is communicating with her, but ultimately they lead her to the caravan that has the sword. So the caravan that was carrying Arthur. So I'm not sure if it was the hidden that was talking to Nimue, or if it was the sword that was calling to Nimue. Either way, she hears magical voices and starts walking in that direction. And at last, she does find the sword of power, and she goes on a murder rampage. Now, I did want to provide the timestamp for this scene because it's one of my favorite scenes so far in the show. This takes place on episode 4, and the timestamp for it is 44 minutes and 1 second. So at that timestamp, we see Nimue peek over the lake or the river where the paladins are bathing, and she just jumps in the water and starts killing these dudes like she's fucking Rambo. This is, like I said, one of the baddest scenes in the show so far. Right up there with the scene where she slaughters all of those wolves in episode 1. So we're gonna go ahead and pull up that scene real quick, loading up here in one of my screens, and let's talk about it. Okay, so we have the scene booted up here on one of my screens. So let me just click play. Now, something I wanted to talk about or mention is that Nimue, right before slaughtering these guys up, she holds the sword upside down with both hands, so with the blade facing down, and she's holding it through the handle, and the sword is not lit up, but she holds it. She clenches both fists and she says, "Please give me your power." And then we see that the sword starts glowing. So the letters that run down the middle of the sword, they start glowing. Now, the way that Nimue sneaks up on these guys is freaking cool. So she doesn't just jump on them, from on top of the hill. These guys are just bathing, cleaning themselves up from the blood of the people that they just killed. And we see Nimue come from underneath the water, and she stabs this guy on the throat. So she just comes from underneath the water like a shark. And these paladins, they start raining on her. So there's guys coming from all sides, everybody with their swords drawn. And she just starts killing them like it's nothing. I don't know how. I don't know if the sword giving her the power as she requested is just giving her the ability to just be so good with it, in addition to just being such a powerful sword, or if this is just her, using the 30-minute master class that Arthur gave her on swinging a sword the other night when he was trying to get his dick wet. Either way, Arthur comes for Nimue's rescue and kills the last of the red paladins that were in that caravan, because that guy was choking Nimue out in the water and he was going to drown her. Now, after getting even with the red paladins, Nimue and Arthur are walking down the forest and they hear some noise, and luckily it's Avery, the little girl from the Snake Clan that was in Dazir's caravan. So Nimue is really happy to see her, and he carries her away with her on their way to Nemos. So Nimue is continuing to follow the directions that are left in the trees by the surviving Fae kind that are hiding at the safe haven Nemos. Now, something that's going to be important down the road is that Cardin, he's praying that, in his own words, the avenging angel of God comes down to, do God's will in his mind if the Paladin army is not able to successfully do so themselves. Now, as he is saying this, there's a scene where there's this young girl, and her name escapes me, from the nun. She was part of the nuns at the abbey from the monastery, and she was really creepy. So when Nimue was there, she will tell Nimue, "I can tell when someone's a demon, meaning a fae kind person, just by looking into their eyes." And this little girl, she looked demonic herself. Anyway, we see her walking away from the abbey, looking like Carrie, and then the damn abbey is burning in the background. So it's interesting that they overlapped Cardin's words with this girl, because this little girl, she's really a zealot. Like, she really believes in what Cardin is doing. And as Cardin was leaving the abbey after taking the head nun prisoner, she was begging Cardin and the other guys to allow her to be a red paladin. Now, when she walks away from the burning abbey and just heads over to the forest, wrapped in a red cloth, because she's really a red paladin wannabe, she stumbles upon some red paladins that she tells them again, "Hey, I want to be a red paladin," and they just laugh her off. And she says, "What do I have to do to become one?" And one of the guys jokingly says, "Oh, bring us the head of the Wolf Blood Witch, and then you can become a Red Paladin." And they're just fucking with her, but she takes that shit seriously, and she's like, "Okay," and she walks away. And that's gonna be important down the road. I want to come back real quick to Merlin, who is able to basically trick the king of the zombies, Rugen, again into allowing him to see his treasure room. So Rugen has this really expansive treasure room full of all types of treasures and rare commodities. Merlin brings him a necklace. It seems like from ancient times, from an old queen from back in the day, and so Rugen takes him with him to his treasure room. Now Merlin's plan the whole time again is just to steal some Fae fire. So he did that because he wanted access to the treasure room to see if the Fae fire was even there to begin with, which it was. There was this little pit in the floor. It was kind of like a fire pit, and this Fae fire, which was green, was burning there. And it looks like this is a special magical fire that just burns forever. And this is why Merlin needed that special jar that can carry some Fae fire, because he needed to steal a little bit of that fire in order to destroy the sword, I'm assuming. It looks like that's the only thing that's strong enough to destroy the sword. Now, at this point in the show, we start seeing some more political drama take place. So we are introduced to Cumber. His name is the Ice King, who wants to overthrow King Uther Pendragon. This guy, King Cumber, exclaims that he is the true heir to House Pendragon, and he is killing Uther's soldiers and destroying his ports all throughout his kingdom. Now, it's not clear if King Cumber knows about the Sword of Power and about the fact that maybe Uther doesn't have it. It's not entirely clear why this drama is taking place, but nevertheless it is. I mean, it could just be business as usual. Kings wanting to be the big boss in the lands and just doing their thing. Just marching their armies, try to overthrow each other as it's always happened. Eventually, Nimue makes her way to Nemo's and finds sanctuary there. She is regrouped with Morgana. Arthur is with them, and Avery finds a family member. So we see a lot of new Fae kind species of people, if you will, at this sanctuary, which is nothing more than a cave system where they are all hiding from the Red Paladin army. There's a lot of interesting entities here. We see a lot of people with antlers. That's mostly what you see, to be honest. You see some people from the Snake Clan, and you do see some Moonwings, the bat-looking people that are covered in white feathers that we saw on episode 1, flying above the cave system as well. So we have all sorts of magical Fae kind living here at Nemo's. Now, while at Nemo's, Nimue is advised by Morgana that she should write a letter to Merlin. So Morgana's theory is that Nimue has to sound authoritative and powerful and stand her ground in order to have King Uther and Merlin take her seriously. So basically, they're just using the fact that they are in possession of the Sword of Power as leverage to negotiate with Merlin. And this negotiating is depending upon the survival of the Fae kind. Basically, they know Merlin wants the sword. They know that King Uther wants the sword to remain king. And they believe that they can leverage this advantage they have to force Merlin to intervene on behalf of the Faith people with King Uther to stop the Red Paladin army from, ultimately killing all of them. Now, once Merlin steals the Feyfire from Rugen's treasure room, he then rides a black horse. So it is the widow's horse. It looks like it's a horse from the underworld, and it seems to be some sort of magical horse that just appears out of nowhere, and can understand when Merlin talks to it. So Merlin is riding this horse back towards King Uther's kingdom. But on his way there, he is detained by the king's soldiers and said that he's under arrest. So King Uther is pissed the hell off, and he wants to put Merlin in jail because he feels like Merlin is just mocking him and humiliating the throne. Now we see Merlin put a backpack, or I don't know what you would call that, some sort of sack, a leather sack on the back of the horse, and tells him, go back to the widow and run like the wind. Because when he's detained, the guards don't seem to take anything away from him. So I'm assuming that there is Feyfire in that little vessel that he obtained from the widow, and that the horse delivered this to the widow as Merlin was being detained. Now, another political influence that arises during this period of the show is that of the Pope. So at this, so far we know that the Red Paladins are operating under a religious dogma or worldview, but now it is confirmed that it's actually the Christian Church who is being portrayed here in a pseudo historical way, the Catholic Church, as the Pope, is present and seems to wield ultimate authority over even the Red Paladin army. So in this scene, we see Cardan is brought out to a huge field that is littered with a bunch of tents and guards. And inside of one of these tents, we see that the Pope is in there, and he's just taking a bath in this little pool that he has in his tent. And at first, he just seems very complimentary of Brother Cardan's work, in killing the Fey kind throughout the land. But then he is really harshly reprimanded by the Pope, basically forgiving Nimue the name Wolf Blood Witch, because the Pope feels like this is something that's giving her extra power and something that the Fey kind can rile behind. And in addition, he's angry at the fact that Cardan has yet to be able to kill Nimue, to deal with this threat to the church. Cardan is humiliated by this encounter with the Pope, and the weeping monk who's standing outside gets an earful from Cardan, because Cardan basically blames him for not finding Nimue yet. Now, it sounds like I'm repeating myself a lot, but there's yet another political influence that comes into play in this in episode 5 of the season. So, and these are the Vikings. So it looks like maybe there's different tribes of Vikings. I'm not sure if the Ice King Cumber and his army are considered Vikings or not. It's not explicitly stated, but we do know of a new set of Vikings or another kingdom that is interested in battling Uther for power. And this is a ship that's being led by the captain that describes herself as the Red Spear. Now, the people on this ship look like Vikings. They come into play because Pym, trying to get away from the giant Aaron that was trying to marry her, just sneaks into a ship just to get the hell out of there because she wasn't trying to marry that dude. And the poor Pym inadvertently ends up in a Viking ship and is basically made the ship's nurse because they were gonna kill her when they found out that she was a fake kind. The Vikings or the Red Spear was ready to kill Pym, but she told them that she was a healer, and she made up this story that she was, or maybe she didn't make it up. I'm honestly not sure. I don't know. I think she played it up a little bit. But Pym says, "Hey, I'm the best healer in my town. I'm actually the best healer in all of the surrounding villages." So she uses that to her advantage and avoids being thrown off the ship by the captain, the Lady Red Spear. Now, once Nimue and Morgana and Arthur agree on what to tell Merlin, they now need a way of delivering this letter to Merlin. Now, I would have thought that it was just, they were just gonna drop it off or something, but what they had to do was go visit this Moonwing sorceress elder named Yiva. Now, this basically bird lady, Moonwings are like bird people. She's really eccentric and weird, and she lives in this, it looks like inside of a tree. It looks like a cave, but made out of tree branches. But anyway, Nimue goes in there and asks her to please help her deliver this letter to Merlin. At first, she's very against it because she, I guess, has a vendetta with Merlin. As it seems like everybody does, Merlin somehow manages to get on the bad side of everybody. But she ultimately agrees to deliver the letter to Merlin when Nimue advises her that the delivering of the letter, that the survival of the Fae kind could depend on it. And she says, "Hey, I don't know where Merlin is, but my bird probably knows." So she has a collection of owls and hawks and all that just sitting around her cave, and she grabs one of the hawks and has the hawk, go find Merlin and deliver the letter to him. Now, while the bird's on his way to deliver the letter to Merlin, we see that King Uther goes to his mother's chamber in the castle to ask her for advice about what to do regarding King, Cumber the Ice King's military campaign against him. Now, Uther's mother seems to think that the reason that the other kingdoms are being emboldened to behave in this way against King Uther is because he's shown weakness. So in her eyes, his leniency with Merlin has caused him to look like a fool in front of the other powerful armies of the area, which they have seized to their advantage and try to overthrow King Uther. Uther's mom thinks that publicly executing Merlin will send a strong message to all of King Uther's enemies, and basically earn him respect from them. They think that if King Uther kills the legendary Merlin, his enemies will be intimidated to the point of not wanting to pursue you know their military campaigns any further. After speaking with his mother, King Uther Pendragon tells Merlin that he has unto the morning to deliver the sword of power, or he will publicly execute Merlin. And Merlin's like, "What the shit? How the hell am I gonna get the sword by morning? In addition to that, I'm chained up in this tower. I can't do shit." King Uther leaves, and then the next morning, they do bring out Merlin to the public square, and in front of the town, or in front of the people that live nearby, they are dead set on executing Merlin. And King Uther even gives the word to drop the axe to decapitate him. And as he was going to do that, as the henchman was gonna decapitate Merlin, Yevaz Hawk sweeps in and delivers Nimwe's letter to the king, and startling the henchman. When King Uther sees the letter and sees that it's true, that Merlin has the ability to obtain the sword based on what Nimue says on a letter, he spares Merlin's life and brings him back into the castle. Now, Merlin knows that Uther was brought to this radical decision by the influence of his mother. And once his life is spared by Uther, he makes his way over to Uther's mother's chambers to go have a chat with her. And his mother, she's really shady. She's known for trying to poison people all the time. And as they're talking, in their indirect ways, Merlin tells her a story about a midwife, which basically is him telling Uther's mother that he knows that Uther is not the rightful heir to the throne. So the little parable that he tells Uther's mother is that there was a queen once upon a time who became a widow, or the wife of a king who became a widow, but was pregnant with a male child, and the child was to become king upon birth. Now, what happened was that the child died during labor, and the midwife took the dead baby and bought another baby from town and brought him back into the castle, and they made that baby. They pretended this whole time that baby was the blood child of the deceased king. It seems like Merlin is implying that Uther is an illegitimate child, that he was adopted or purchased as a newborn, to replace the stillborn baby of his mother, and therefore he should not be king. Merlin also implies that he knows where that midwife is that purchased the baby, and that he's protecting her. Basically telling Uther's mother, I can do whatever I want with you. If you do any dumb shit like this again, I'm going to tell everybody that Uther shouldn't be king, that he's not your real son. Now, that's it for Uther. So far into the series, and for all the political drama that was going on. But one thing that doesn't seem to stop is our beloved Arthur trying to get his dick wet. So our criminal hero, he I guess gets real comfortable in the caves, and he just wants to have a good time with Nimue again. And he takes her to this hot spring that somehow formed at the top of the snowy mountain. and he just fucking gets naked. He just whips his dick out in front of Nimue and gets naked and goes skinny dipping. And Nimue's like, "What the fuck? What are you doing?" But she's still looking. And and he's like, "Come on, let's have a good time." And Nimue's like, "Oh no, I shouldn't." And then eventually goes into the hot spring with him. And it's a cute scene. He sees her scars. She becomes self-conscious. But Arthur, being the good guy that he is, he starts showing her his scars. So he shows her a scar that he apparently got when he was a kid because a rat bit him. And then things turn real dark when he shows him the slice across his chest. And she's like, "What's that one from?" And he's honest. He doesn't hold anything back. And he says, "That's from the first man that I killed." And it turns out that was the man that had killed his father. So he was avenging his father's death. Um, you know, it looks like Nimue and Arthur have this chemistry, and it looks like Nimue is down for it. They were gonna kiss and everything, and then Arthur backed up a little bit. He's like, Arthur has this problem where he just feels like he needs to restore his honor, that he's not good enough. He basically has this "I'm not good enough for you" mentality. I'm not worthy of you because of the way society sees me or the way I see myself. And Nimue, in her sweet way, just tells him, "Hey, you never lost your honor." So, regardless of all the shit that Arthur did, stealing her sword and whatnot, she sees the good in him, and she sees him for what he really is. And all things considered, Arthur is a really good dude. He's just been dealt a shit hand by life, and from where I'm standing, it just looks like he tried doing the best he could with the hand that he was dealt. Now, after they're done swimming naked, Nimue and Arthur they go to a Fey joining. So basically, it's a wedding, it's a fairy wedding that's going on in the cave. So a couple of the antler people, they haven't said their names yet, so I'm not sure what they're really called. But a couple of people with antlers are getting married, and they're doing this wedding ceremony, and everybody's having a great time. It's a beautiful ceremony. Everybody's dancing and drinking, and there's music, and it's just a really festive and awesome vibe that's going on in the party. And while they're dancing underneath this arch in the cave, Nimue and Arthur kiss, and they kiss for real. They're really vibing, and I thought it was super cute. I know a lot of people online don't like the Nimue Arthur relationship. Somehow they want Nimue to end up with Lancelot or some other dude, maybe the Green Knight or whatnot. But I really like Arthur and Nimue. I don't know. I think they look super cute together, and I was happy for both of them when that happened. Now, as with all things in life, that was really short-lived. That happiness they had there, because out of nowhere, there's a bit of a ruckus in the cave, and everybody is rejoicing because this fabled Green Knight has arrived, which is like he's the hero of Nemos. There's even paintings of him on the walls. So this Green Knight arrives, and he's wearing a green armor and a Green Knight's helmet with green antlers coming out of it. And he walks in with several survivors. So that earns him, hero points right there. And among one of those survivors is Squirrel. So our little mean Peter Pan boy that Nimue loves so much from her town shows up. And, Nimue is, over the moon. She's really happy that she's reunited with Squirrel. I'm sure she thought that the poor kid was dead. So she's super happy for that. And then Mr. Green Knight takes off his helmet, and it turns out to be Gawain. which is an old friend of Nimwe's. Now, this is super awkward for Arthur because he's just standing there like a turd as Nimue is just rejoicing over here, catching up with everybody. So Arthur is, like totally third wheeling at this point, and Nimue basically just dumps him to go hang out with Gawain for the rest of the night. Now, one of the new people that joined the Nemo's community while this festivity was going on is the little crazy girl from the Abbey. So she somehow managed to make her way into Nemo's undetected by Nimue, since Nimue and Morgana had seen, know her from the Abbey. And she's just standing around with her little psycho eyes, just, totally grilling Nimue. Obviously, just planning how the hell she's going to kill her. Now, we're getting close to the end of episode 5 of the first half of the show. And we see towards the last scene here at Nemo's that the Green Knight, or Gawain, is basically trying to talk Nimue out of giving the Sword of Power to Merlin. He says that Merlin can't be trusted, that he looks out for the interest of man blood or of humans, and that the Sword of Power is the history of the Fey kind, and is the only thing that guarantees them, protection from the tyranny of humankind. So, Nimue is now confronted with this dilemma on what to do about it. But Nimue, she's not a pushover. She's, her whole life she has had to stand up for herself and toughen up. So whether it be Arthur or anybody, she doesn't let people tell her, what to do or what to think. So it's not very clear, exactly what she's going to do, but it looks like she's not buying Gawain's point of view on it. Now, the last scene where episode 5 and the first half of the show ends is when Nimue goes back to Yeva, the Moonwing Elder, to perform a ritual to communicate with Merlin. So Merlin got the message from Nimue, and he's wanting to meet with her. Now, unbeknownst to me, and I'm not sure if Nimue was aware of this, but they have, I guess, like some sort of telepathic, magical meeting room situation that they could employ in this world. Now, the Moonwing Yeva refers to this as the Between. It kind of reminds me of the Upside Down from Stranger Things. But she refers to it as the Between, and basically it's like a dream state where their bodies, it looks like, and their spirits are spiritually transported to a common meeting place. So they end up meeting at the temple where Lenore was murdered. So the Skyfolk Elder Temple. And Merlin is confused by this because he says, usually when we do these magical teleconference calls, they're usually like in fields or, just open spaces. But if we're meeting in this room, it's because we're both somehow connected to it. And Nimue says, this is where my mother was murdered. I'm one of the Skyfolk. This used to be my town. So I know how I'm connected to this. How are you connected? And she asked Merlin if he knew Lenore. And Merlin is like, yeah, I knew her from back in the day. And then it clicks for Nimue. And she looks at Merlin and she says, oh shit, you're my father. She doesn't say oh shit, but that's the tone that the show leaves in. And I was pretty mind blown at that point. So it looks like Merlin is Nimue's dad. This revelation, brings everything together in terms of Nemoe's relationship with who we thought her real dad was at the beginning of the show. So, tying it back to the beginning of episode 2, where Nimue was attacked by the bear, and the man who's supposed to be her father really didn't stand up for her when the elders were telling Lenore, her mother, that they didn't want her in town, and also a few other scenes that are sprinkled here and there, showing Nimue's relationship to her father. Ultimately, where it is shown that her, supposed birth father was basically left. He left town. He abandoned Nimue and Lenore, and when Nimue asked why, his father basically said, "I can't bring myself to tell you. Ask your mother." And it sounds like that was a question that was never answered by Lenore. You know, it was other times, so I'm sure it was divorce and things like that was something that was not openly talked about. But that's it for the first half of Cursed. So that's episode 1 through 5. Uh, the TV show, it starts off slow, but it picks up pretty good. And, a few episodes in, it's very easy to get immersed in this world that the creators have made for us here. So far, I'm enjoying the show, and I'm really looking forward to see what's gonna happen next, because things they're left off here at a really interesting point with the revelation that Merlin is Nemoe's dad. On the next episode, we will be talking about the second half of Cursed. That's going to be episodes 6 through 10. So we will be finishing the show next week. New episodes for the podcast are released every Wednesday. So make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or follow on Spotify to be notified of new episodes. The show is also available on YouTube. You can simply search the Midnight Binge podcast and it will come right up. This week, I'm super excited to announce our very first Patreon supporter, Autumn. Thank you so much, Autumn, for supporting the show. I really appreciate your contribution and your enthusiasm for the future of this podcast. If you're not a Patreon yet, let me tell you about the best $3 you can ever spend in your life. So for just $3 a month, you can become an entry-level binger, which earns you a shout-out on the show and access to the Patreon-exclusive Midnight Binge podcast Discord server, which basically is a really cool invite-only private chat group where we can all get together and talk about the Netflix shows that we love. And that's just the entry-level tier. There are higher-level tiers to choose from, which unlock tons of additional perks and exclusive access to new content. For just $2 more, you can become an official binger, granting you access to the Midnight Movie Binge episodes, where I discuss and review Netflix original movies. Official bingers also get a virtual binger badge customized with their name for you to show off as a podcast supporter. Finally, you will feel good knowing you made a positive impact on the future of the show, and I really do appreciate everybody who in one way or another is supporting the progress of this podcast. So for more information, just visit patreon.com/midnightbinge. The link is also available in the episode description for the show. So it's a quick access for you right there. If you're not ready to become a patron yet, there's a way you can support the show absolutely free. You can simply leave the show a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and tell a friend about the show. It really helps with getting visibility for new listeners on all platforms and getting the word out for the show. If you're new to the show and want to learn more, make sure you visit midnightbinge.com where you can find out everything about the show, including how to get your hands on some cool merch. We have some t-shirts, mugs, and a decal at the moment that I've released so far. And they're all pretty cool. Some people already got some shirts and a mug. So I'm really excited about that. Also, if you don't already, make sure to follow the show on Instagram at Midnight Binge Podcast and on Twitter at Midnight Binger. Go ahead and drop me a message. Say hi. I love chatting with you guys there, and I always have a good time just talking with people about the show on there. So that's it, folks. Thanks for listening. Keep binging and catch you on the next one.